The Movie Preview Critic. Informing and entertaining your movie world.
What's up, good movie lovers? Welcome to a movie night for Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. I am the Movie Preview Critic, and we'll be taking this journey together because there's been a lot of press lately about Transformers 3 going into production and some changes that have taken place. What's been most interesting for me is a statement from Michael Bay and producers from the second film regarding why the second one didn't work, and basically Michael Bay apologizing for Transformers 2 and promising to make a better sequel. Now, I kind of liken this to someone who might be a gambler or an alcoholic, where their past behavior has shown me what to expect from them, and even though they might make a lot of promises, I'm a little doubtful that their future actions are going to be much different than their past ones, especially since Revenge of the Fallen grossed $835 million worldwide. So almost $1 billion. Okay, it's $165 million less than The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight was one of the most complete superhero films in recent memory in terms of just really hitting everything in character and story and theme. It was really a layered film. And it only made $165 million more than Transformers 2, which had a lot of things wrong with that, and we're going to get into that in a moment. So Transformers 2, they really didn't try that hard, and they got away with it. They got away with being rewarded big time. So it's a little bit depressing to think that Christopher Nolan put together an Oscar-nominated film, and Transformers 2, which actually won the Razzie Award for Worst Film of the Year, wasn't that far behind it in terms of box office. So we need to, as a movie-going society, as a entertainment democracy, to vote better with our box office dollar. So I just want to really quickly go into what to expect from this movie night. If you haven't listened to a movie night before, it's basically a poor man's audio commentary, a critic's audio commentary, which ideally has the following format. I have a copy of the movie here, and I'm going to press play in a minute and just start critiquing and analyzing the film, and hopefully wherever you're listening, you have a copy of the movie as well. We queue it up simultaneously. I'll mention when I'm starting it, and throughout the commentary, I'll keep mentioning the time code or just where I'm at in the film, even though it's not really going to be important that we stay exactly in the same scene, because I won't necessarily be sticking to the scene-by-scene analysis. Sometimes subjects come up, and we'll take a little detour for a while and then join the film back in the present moment. So if you have a copy of the film, great. If not, then it's not that big of a deal. You'll still get the overall effect of this commentary or the intention here. And if you've seen the film, hopefully memories will be stirred by the discussion and you'll have it playing in your mind. With that said, hopefully you've seen the film. I do recommend watching it because it'll just add to the analysis and hopefully what we're trying to do here, which is really pick it apart, analyze it for what worked. There were some things that were successful, and I do want to show respect to the people that made the film, because even though it wasn't the greatest movie, there's a lot of hard work that goes into the CGI aspect of it, a lot of talented people bringing the Transformers to life in a very realistic way, and we have to give them credit for that. And then we'll talk about the things that didn't work. I really want to analyze this from a screenwriting perspective because it all begins in the writing and the story, and that's where 90% of the work goes, where it should be going. And if that's solid, then the rest will follow. So let's take a look at this article really quickly. If you want to find this article, just type into whatever search engine. Michael Bay apologizes for Transformers 2, and the first couple links will take you to the articles. A couple different websites have them, but basically, here we go. Michael Bay apologizes for Transformers 2, promises a better Transformers 3. Posted June 11th, so a few days ago. Despite poor reviews, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen was an inarguable hit last summer, scoring $402 million domestically. Again, we know it's $835 worldwide. What can also be argued is that it sucked. Transformers fans have been quick to contest the quality of the Transformers sequel, and even Shia LaBeouf admits that he wasn't impressed with what we did in Revenge of the Fallen. Now, director Michael Bay is getting in the apology act. In a recent set visit, Bay talked to USA Today about the failures of Revenge of the Fallen. I'll take some of the criticism. It was very hard to put the sequel together that quickly after the writer's strike of 2007-2008. Here's a quote from producer Lorenzo Di Bonaventura. We tried to do too many things in the second movie, which didn't give enough time in any one of them. We were constantly jumping to the next piece of information, the next place. Bay promises that Transformers 3 will be better by getting rid of what didn't work in Revenge of the Fallen. One thing we're getting rid of is what I call the dorky comedy, Bay admitted, and giving Transformers 3 a better ending. This one really builds to a final crescendo. It's not 3 multiple endings. As a trilogy, it really ends. It could be rebooted again, but I think it has a really killer ending. Besides sophomoric humor, Transformers 3 will also be without Megan Fox, who was reportedly dropped from the movie when Paramount declined Fox's option right before shooting began. Fox was replaced by Victoria's Secret's model Rosie Huntington Whiteley as a new love interest for LaBeouf. The change is one thing that LaBeouf thinks will improve the movie. I love Megan and I miss the girl, but Sam and Malenka, oh, that's her name? I always thought her character name was Hottius Maximus or Bootyformer. Okay. To continue his quote, but Sam and Malenka became one character, and here you have Discovery again from a new perspective. The sequel's villains will be better too. Bay called the character of the Fallen kind of a bleep character. So Transformers 3's main villain will be Shockwave, the robot Cyclops turned laser cannon and dictator of the Transformers' homeworld of Cybertron. The plot of the movie is being kept secret, though Bay divulged that the sequel will have something to do with the space race between the US and the USSR. The movie is more of a mystery. It ties in what we know as history growing up as kids with what really happened. Transformers 3 opens July 1st, 2011. Wow. Okay, so just some quick things to mention from that article. I love the quote from Bay right away. I'll take some of the criticism. That's a little bit annoying because the director is the one with the vision, the one with the final say, and when you watch both Transformers films, it's Bay's signature. It's Bay's vision that is communicated on the screen. I guarantee you that the writers, Robert Orci and Alex Kurtzman, and for the second film, both of them and Aaron Kruger, wanted to have better character development and a more coherent story because their body of work, their past behavior indicates that they know what they're doing, they care about the core elements of storytelling, and they would want that to continue with their new work. But you can just tell that ideas were replaced, hijacked, removed, and vetoed by the Commander-in-Chief, which would be Michael Bay. So he should take more than just some of the criticism. This has his signature sophomoric humor, what he calls dorky humor. It's Bay using humor in place of story and character development, which we'll get into as we watch the movie in just a second. And with Lorenzo's quote here, the producer, this film definitely did try to do too many things. A movie usually should jump from one piece of information to the next. That's how story unfolds. While this quote is approaching some truth, it's not necessarily totally accurate because it's not identifying exactly what, and that's what we have to do here. So our job is to really make these things clear, so when we, as the movie-going audience that makes these movies a success, that allows these filmmakers to continue having careers, because our box office dollars basically vote them back into entertainment office, it allows all of these people to continue their careers because they're in successful films, which we are funding. So again, we have the power and we can choose, we can vote whoever we want back into entertainment office. We have to kind of look at this as sort of the Senate or the House of Representatives. We are voting for our representatives. Who do we want to have telling our stories, entertaining us? Megan Fox is not a make or break deal, and it's such a joke that a Victoria's Secret model is replacing her. The issue is not to have another beautiful woman. The issue is to have a better character. And if you want to have new exploration, as Shia LaBeouf is saying here, that if you add a new character, it's going to allow another perspective to come in. Well, the hottie booty former really wasn't written as an interesting person. She wasn't even two-dimensional. She was just a hot piece of ass that we could stare at and have car commercial music video close-ups of, which is Bay's strength, his specialty, his signature. That's how he strengthened his craft, music videos and commercials, and it's not a coincidence that both Transformers movies feel this way. So changing Megan Fox, it's not a story thing. It's more politics, contract money. That was the real reason, and it's not going to make a difference. It's such a joke that you get a model to do it. Now, I would have been impressed. Give me Natalie Portman. She's hot and she can act. That would have been a stronger gesture. But then again, her skills really weren't used in the Star Wars films. So just because you have someone who can act doesn't mean that they will, because again, it comes down to the vision of the commander-in-chief, of the director. And then we have this thing about the USSR. I don't think there's a space race going on right now between the US and the USSR. I don't even think the USSR exists, correct? That the wall fell about 20 years ago. So this has all been set in the past, even though there's newer cars and Camaros and all this. So are we jumping back in time, and what is going on here? Maybe there's some sort of a Stargate that they open up, some quantum wormhole, and they travel back to the late 80s or 70s or whatever. 60s, 50s? Oh, geez. There's something about history here. And again, these writers are tied into Fringe and Lost and the whole J.J. Abrams thing, so parallel realities and time travel seem to be a popular thing right now within the creative idea story generating writing sessions of those writers. So there's a chance here that there may be some time travel involved, it seems like. And Shockwave is the villain, which is kind of okay, but didn't it seem that back in the cartoon, when it was on in the 80s, Shockwave was basically just a steroided version of Megatron? He's also a gun, but he had a wider barrel. That means he could shoot a larger laser blast out. What's up with that? I kind of was looking forward to seeing Unicron in this, because it seems like they're ending the trilogy. They're bringing it to a close. And unfortunately, the first two films really haven't created any momentum, any bigger story. There's nothing that needs to be crescendoed, as Bay describes it here. There's nothing that needs to be closed, because we haven't gotten into any mythology of the Transformers or Cybertron or any of this. It's just been a lot of dorky comedy, close-ups of Megan Fox's abs, ass, and lips, and some cool robotic fighting that's filmed a little bit too close and confusingly, so we can't tell what's going on. That's the first two films, so there's really nothing that's been built up. With that said, let's get into Transformers 2. So if you have your copy ready, I am at the This Motion Picture Has Been Rated PG-13 screen. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Now I have the sound turned down on my end because I don't want to get into any copyright issues, and I'm sure if the movie plays in the background, this audio file, this video can be flagged for copyright infringement. So let's just play it safe. So I do enjoy the robotic sound effects over the Paramount logo. It really sets a cool mood. But unfortunately, the story does not live up. Currently at a minute into the film from the time I press play, and we have some really great-looking footage. Again, Bay is a master of making things look cool, which is what music, videos, and commercials are all about. And it just feels like this should have some kind of Lady Gaga beat going over it, or it's selling some kind of product, a cell phone commercial or something. Or actually, it should be a car commercial, because we have the tiger running fast. And these guys who didn't make the cut of Roland Emmerich's 10,000 BC. This is basically lost footage from that movie. And here we have a pretty cool shot of the Fallen's base or something, and we have some Transformers, some Decepticons, ancient ones on Earth, 10,000 years ago, 17,000 years ago. Really cool close-ups of teeth. I like that, the prehistoric Cro-Magnon teeth. But what does it really add to the story? Now let's just talk about screenplay structure. Really got to get this out very quickly so we can kind of keep up. I have the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen title sequence on the screen right now, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. When you're doing any kind of story, especially an American mainstream movie, there's a certain set of elements that you need in a film that have become solidified over 100 years of feature filmmaking, mainstream movie requirements that we as an audience have become accustomed to and that producers and studios have refined in terms of producing and making these films. Basically, we're looking for a main character, someone who we're going to follow through a journey. This main character usually has some kind of causal event happen to them. Basically, they're in their ordinary world, everything is fine, and then this event, out of their control, presents itself. Joseph Campbell refers to this as the call to adventure. So it's Obi-Wan Kenobi saying to Luke, "You must go with me to find the princess." Or it's Morpheus saying to Neo, "I want to show you what the Matrix is." It's the call to adventure. Usually the main character says yes to this, because if they don't, then there's no movie. So when the army comes to Indiana Jones and says, "Well, the Nazis are going after the Ark," okay, do you want to get there before they do or not? So you say yes, causal event, fateful decision. They take on the adventure, and then now they have an objective. Here's what I need to do. Here's what I'm going after. An objective is very important in American movies because it's something tangible. It's something that we as an audience can hold on to and say, scene to scene, every moment of the movie, the main character is going after this. And in order to create conflict and drama, you need an opponent, someone who has the thing they need, is going after what they want, also is in their way. So an opponent must stop the main character from achieving the objective. You got to have some stakes. What will happen if they don't get this? If the answer is nothing really will happen or no one will die and the world won't blow up, then we don't care. So you got to have some stakes. And ideally, there is a person, a sidekick, a window character, someone that the main character talks to, and from time to time will reveal how they feel about things. This ties into the character's thematic journey. How am I changing? Now again, every movie doesn't need to have this. Some characters like Superman or James Bond, superheroes, or just people who are fine with who they are, they're not looking to change, they're kind of just involved in a adventure, in a journey, that's fine. Nothing wrong with having a movie like that. My challenge is always, why not have it? It's a person going through something fantastic enough to be on the big screen. It's the day that my life changes, or the day that everything goes out of whack and I have to challenge myself to take on this thing I never thought I could do. If you're going to be put to the test, by the end of that test, you probably will be different. So why not have a thematic change? That's the basic structure. Now, here's the next upping the ante. If you really want to create a quality story or a quality movie, treat every character as if they're the main character, which means every character needs to have that structure. If you look at a show, one of my favorite shows that I always mention, and it just teaches this lesson all the time, is Lost. Every character on Lost is a main character. We get their backstory. They're really well developed. We know who they are, what they want, what they care about, and when things happen to them, we are connected to them, we feel, we understand what it means to them. Every character is on a journey. The thing about a movie is you have to decide who is the camera going to stay with. So every character has a movie going on, everyone is a main character, but who is the camera going to be following? That's the gist of it. So Act 1 is the setup of all these elements, putting things into motion, basically lining these horses up to the starting gate. And when the gun goes off and the gates open and the horses are off, you're into Act 2. The struggle for the objective, the battle against the opponent, the battle with the self, if there is a theme going on, and the person is going to change. And that goes all the way to Act 3 when you have the resolution. Did the main character achieve their objective or not? Yes or no? It's fine if they don't. Usually we do like to have the happy ending where they achieve it, but it could be something like The Graduate, one of the best and first ambiguous endings in mainstream American movies, where the main character gets the girl, but then he's not sure if he did the right thing. He's not sure if he really wants the girl. But at the same time, we feel solidly resolved. We're like, that's what the movie needed. We are fine with that. So take us through this complete journey and make sure each character is developed. Each character is on their own journey, so hopefully as we go through the movie, each character is progressing. Every horse in a race crosses the finish line. The only difference is what place they're in. So every horse is on their own journey. They go through their own struggle. They are a fully developed character, okay? Here, each person needs to be thought through, have a perspective, everyone wants something, and again, it's always better, in my opinion, to have good versus good instead of good versus evil. So you can have Optimus fighting with Ratchet, or Optimus and Sam fighting each other, or Bumblebee and Sam fighting with each other. Why not have all this kind of stuff? Now, I basically just talked for 7 minutes, and we missed the second opening. Usually an action movie, a typical action film, will open with a really just gripping, great sequence that's like, okay, ramps us up, gets us in the mood for the film, the genre that it is. And here we have Optimus and the rest of the Autobots seeking out the Decepticons. And the Decepticons have kind of become scattered, and they're hiding everywhere. So now the Autobots have joined with the U.S. military, and they're hunting all of them down. And Optimus here in this sequence is pretty much a badass, right? Let's just call the Decepticon that they chase down, let's call him Big Wheel. 2 huge tires, really cool looking. Love that part where Optimus jumps onto him by the highway, and he's like 5 times the size of Optimus. Very cool visual. Again, everyone who was involved in realizing this, in the CGI aspect of making this a reality, great work. You can just tell that hours and hours of rendering and crafting went into it. Looks fantastic. Very well done. So what does it set in motion in terms of the story structure? Well, we have 2 lines of story going on right now. We have the Fallen and some of the Decepticons, or whatever you want to call it, the ancient ones, were here 17,000 years ago. Okay, great. So now that's in our mind, right? It's okay, that's in the background. So hopefully we're going to cut back to that, and the next time we see it, it's going to progress. The story momentum is moving forward. Now the second track that we've laid out here is Optimus and the Autobots working with the US to hunt down Decepticons. Okay, that's great. So now hopefully the next time we cut back to Optimus and the rest of the Autobots, there's something going on along with that objective. 11 minutes in, we have this slow shot of the camera moving into the Booty Former's set piece. As Booty Former, for some reason, is on a motorcycle in Daisy Dukes, in the most provocative position, fixing the motorcycle or waxing it or something. So, okay, I guess so. I guess that's going to be fixed in the third movie. There's apparently not going to be any shots of the Victoria's Secret model in that kind of position. This is only being done, this change of actor, of actress, is only being made because of thespian talent, because of acting credentials, and bringing something to the role that Megan Fox couldn't bring. Or we just want a new piece of ass because we're tired of Megan Fox. She's no longer the it girl of the moment. Let's maintain a little cynicism here because it's really not going to make that big of a difference. Now, just to finish off the thought about that second line. So the next time we see Optimus and the gang, they are going to be continuing to help the U.S. military. Now, there was a nice little kind of hook point at the end of that sequence where the Decepticon that Optimus just shot, right? That was pretty cool to see Optimus being a little bit of a badass. He just blew the guy's head off. He warned something about the Fallen is coming or we're going to have our revenge. I don't have any subtitles up and I didn't memorize the dialogue, so I'm vaguely remembering that Decepticon said something about the Fallen is coming or they will return, blah, blah, blah. Alright, so now that's a little teaser as well. Now, the technical term for that is a setup. Usually scenes end with setups and they begin with payoffs. It's just like when you're watching a TV show, before the program cuts to commercial, you want to hook the audience. So you're going to ask some kind of question. You're going to leave something hanging. So we, the audience, are going to want to stick through the commercials, or if we, of course, flip around the channels, we're going to want to come back in a couple minutes because we want to see the answer. We want to know what happened. So we have a setup and we get the payoff. We ask a question, we get the answer. So we have this setup of Optimus helping the army and this whole thing of the Fallen is coming. Now the setup of the opening little teaser sequence was, okay, the Decepticons are here 17,000 years ago. What does that mean? The third track that we're laying out now is Sam and his family. This is Sam is going to college, so we have a little progression since the first film. And he's still dating the Booty Former, who is not going to college, and she's working in a garage. And I guess the only requirement, again, is that she dresses kind of like a porn star or a stripper. And Sam's parents here are feeling a little bit of empty nest syndrome, where the mom is kind of having a little bit of a nervous breakdown because he's leaving, which is cool. I kind of like that the parents' characters have a little theme going on. It could be that they're going to change, which is great. Every character is a main character. If you take this movie from the perspective of Sam's parents, it becomes a little more of a drama, because now there are two people whose child is leaving their home, and now they have to reform their relationship, or their relationship is going to be transformed, and they're going to have to deal with each other in a new way. So we establish a couple different threads within this sequence. We have Sam going to college. We have the parents kind of dealing with that empty nest syndrome. We have this new setup, which is a piece of the Ark, or whatever the box technology from the first movie was called. Again, I'm kind of not really a big fan of these films, so I haven't bothered to memorize all the details, but I believe it was called the Ark. Let's just call it the Energon box, whatever. If they don't respect me as an audience member, I don't respect the material. And Sam has a piece of this, so he touches it, and he gets zapped with a bunch of information, and it goes through his mind, and for some reason the piece becomes like super hot, and we have a rip-off of Aliens, where like the acidic blood starts dripping through all the levels of the floors, and just keeps going level to level. So here the piece falls down, hits the kitchen table, and all of the machines in the kitchen come to life. If you've listened to the Transformers commentary, the actually first movie night that I ever did was for Transformers, so this is kind of an anniversary movie night. One suggestion I would have liked to have seen in the first film towards the end was that the Ark, the Energon box, it would have been cool if it would have had this Gremlins kind of effect. If you remember the end of Gremlins, they jump into the pool, and the whole town becomes infested with gremlins. So if this box would have touched all the different just cars and electronics and soda machines, there would have been hundreds of Decepticons to attack the Transformers, and it really would have been, how are they going to get out of this? It would have been really dramatic. And who knows, in terms of logic, why the Energon box piece fragment thing only creates evil Transformers. Why does it only create Decepticons? How were the Autobots made? Is it like, okay, they're born bad and they have to learn how to be good? What's the deal with that? So we have this kind of little sequence here where now he has to fight off all these toasters and microwaves and little annoying dorky comedy Decepticons that really aren't a threat. And the house is destroyed again, just like it was in the first film. And it's a time-consuming detour that really doesn't progress any story at the moment. We don't really need to see that. Every sequence at this moment doesn't need to have non-stop action in it. And we've had a mini action sequence after we've just been introduced to a major one. Now, Booty Former shows up looking hot on her motorcycle, and she promptly takes off the skin-tight leather to reveal a white dress that's kind of thigh-high, and she's holding flowers, and who knows what that means. What's the motivation for the character? What does she want? And because it's Michael Bay, you have to have, here at about 18 minutes into the film, the camera swirling around the characters. Now, I guess maybe the camera angle is mirroring their emotions. I don't necessarily think so, because this is more something of a characters when they meet, when they're in the middle of the fury of first love, romance, lust. The swirling camera seems to reflect that a little bit better. Here it should be more anxious. It should be he's going off and there's hot girls and beer and frat parties at college, and chances are Sam is going to be hooking up with other girls, even though the Booty Former is Maxim's number one girl, most wanted girl of 2009 or whatever. So where is that anxiety? The camera angle really isn't reflecting that. So it would have been nice if their relationship was actually a real relationship there, but there's just some cliche dialogue. We get some hot shots of the Booty Former, and we move on. What's been set up with that sequence? We know Sam's parents are anxious. Sam's going to college. Booty Former is a little bit nervous that he's going to college, but she still wants to have a relationship with him, and he's committed to her. And then the major, let's say the overarching, the objective slash story, the major objective related development there would be the piece of the Ark, in that she has it now. There's a little remote control car truck thing, Decepticon, that survived the clash in the kitchen, and now it's going to be following Booty Former around. Okay, I guess that's fine. Oh, and let's talk about this really quickly. For some reason, Bumblebee is mute again. At the end of the first film, he was able to talk. He sounded like a British butler. But now, he has no voice again. And really quickly, the reason this is done, the reason it was done in the first movie, is that if Bumblebee has a voice, it means he has to have a developed character, he has to have an objective, he has to have a personality, he has to go after what he wants, which means he has to be in conflict with people. Most notably, he'll be in conflict with Sam, and that will mean that the story has to move forward. If he can't talk, then he's not a character that's going to create conflict and move the story forward. In the first film, for example, he knows things about what the Autobots are planning, and if he were to voice those things to Sam, they would take steps to move the action, to move the pursuit of objective along a little bit faster. So instead of choosing story and conflict and drama, the writers, or let's just say the commander-in-chief of the film, has decided to go with the dorky comedy. So we get Bumblebee in a garage, and he's crying oil or windshield fluid, and he's very sad that Sam is leaving. Sam has to be probably the dumbest teenager alive, because you have a transforming Camaro. And you're not going to take it to college to impress the girls and the guys that you want to be friends with. You're not going to take it to be the most popular kid in school. I don't know. I don't know enough about Sam's character for that to be justified. And let's just keep it real, man. If that was us in that situation, we'd be like, okay, Bumblebee, you're coming to college with me. Easily. So that doesn't make any sense. And for Bumblebee's character, there's no setup. There's no question asked at the end of that scene. Yeah, Sam is leaving, but it would have been great if Bumblebee could actually speak to him, because then what? They would have probably argued, and there would have been some conflict, and it would have been good versus good. Two friends fighting with each other is always more interesting to watch than the bad guy twirling the mustache and the good hero who's just Mr. Noble. It's always more fun to watch two people that you like fight, because it's tougher for us to choose sides than it is for, it's the evil Emperor in Star Wars and Luke Skywalker. Well, we know we love Luke Skywalker. But later, when it's Luke and Darth towards the end of Jedi, and it's obvious Darth is on the verge of coming back and being redeemed, that's a way more interesting dynamic going on there. So, big time missed opportunity. Develop each of the characters, which is something from the first movie that should have happened. Focus this on the Transformers. If Pixar can do Toy Story 3, can make toys in a kid's attic, in a kid's closet, interesting, developed, and real, then we can make robots relatable. Because it's all about personification. All we need is just emotion. We just need the human characteristics transferred, and we're going to fill in the blanks, and we're going to go with it. It's not that big of a problem. So the mistake with this franchise, with this trilogy, was made at the onset, that this should have been focused on the drama between Transformers, and the humans are just an afterthought. Oh, here's one of my most hated setups for a sequel ever. At the end of Transformers, you have the corpse of Megatron being dropped into the ocean, and the voiceover is like, it will fall to whatever depths, and it'll freeze and be crushed, and we'll never have to worry about it again. Which is code for saying, because in the sequel, we need to have the other Decepticons from space come back and reawaken Megatron. How about you drop him in a volcano? How about you melt him down with the T-1000? Put him in some kind of lava pit, and he becomes a box of staples. That's how you get rid of a threat. It's the worst setup ever, and the dialogue at the end of that first film is so insulting. Here at 24:54, right at 25 minutes, we go back to the second storyline that was developed here, where Optimus and the Autobots are helping the military. Enter some opposition. So again, this is actually decent dramatic structure where the Autobots have their own objective, right? That's their own movie. We could get rid of Sam at this moment. We can get rid of that opening little teaser with the 17,000 years ago. And the movie could be about Optimus, the Autobots, and the Army. That would be one movie, but here we're cutting back between basically two movies right now, with a hint at the third, where the second movie is Sam, his parents, and going to college. Now, the first movie here, movie 1, storyline 1, would be, again, Optimus, the Autobots, military. So now the opponent in that structure is this human figure, this bureaucrat who comes in thinking he has the power, and for some reason he wants to shut down this project, this joint project to capture all the Decepticons, because he doesn't trust the Autobots. And it's really insulting in terms of the level of logic that's approached in the story. It's just that this character is being introduced for the sake of opposition. The logic behind his motivation makes no sense. What, he's just a power-hungry commander or bureaucrat, whatever, who just wants to be able to have control over these alien robots? Dude, you're talking to like a 4-story robot who's been capturing proven opponents, proven Decepticons, and for some reason you don't trust them anymore? Why do you even think that that's a wise move? Well, it's being done because the director and writers are puppeting that character, and we need to have some conflict here. This is going to be the character that gives us the conflict with the Autobots. And there's no logical motivation behind him. He really reminds me of James Woods' character in Contact, the Jodie Foster film about first contact with an alien race from like 1997, 98. Really solid film. But the attitude of the James Woods character in there was very similar, where he's just like, I want to protect the country, and I don't believe this, and I need to shut this project down. You need to have some pressure, but the little asterisk next to that is it has to make sense. This character has to have a reason that we can believe. They need to be fully formed again as a person. Whenever you listen to interviews with people, actors who have played quote-unquote bad guys, from their perspective, they're not evil. They're just doing what they believe. No one really thinks that they're an a-hole or that they're doing the wrong thing. They're just doing what they need to do to survive or to further their beliefs. So everyone is kind of a hero in their own mind. With that flaw pointed out, that scene does do a good job of kind of hooking us and saying, okay, well, here's the question, here's the setup, that this project is going to be shut down. Okay, we can kind of believe that. Why not? So then we leave that storyline. Boom, we cut back to this one. So if you've seen Lost, or I'm trying to think of another show to compare it to, Lost is a good one because they have that automatic kind of flashback or flash forward tied in with the present moment. When you go to the present moment, there's a story going on. Boom, you flash back, there's another story separate from that. Thematically, they're connected in Lost, which is really why we connect with the characters, because both timelines, both stories in each episode, no matter the character they're dealing with, always reflect something internal. They reflect that struggle within, as well as some objectives that are going on physically, tangibly, that we can film and see and relate to in that respect. So here we basically have the second story of Sam going off to college. Now again, he's the main character. What is his objective? Go off on his own, be independent. Is there an opponent? Not necessarily anybody right now. His mother, his parents don't want to let him go, you could say that. And in a lot of ways, this is just kind of a teenage drama. If you got rid of all the Autobots, all the Decepticons, the robots, the military from this movie, if you edited just the scenes here in the first act with Sam, it would be maybe a teen sex comedy, a raunchy comedy like American Pie. You can kind of see that that's where this would be going, in that direction. But once you throw in the whole action and robots into it, it changes the genre of it. Just like if you watch the first 30 minutes of Die Hard, it's really a drama about a couple that's on the verge of divorce until the terrorists or the robbers show up, and now it becomes an action movie, which is really something great about that film. Now here we have at 30 minutes some comedy with the parents. The mom eats the brownies with the special ingredients, and we have more of what Bay called dorky comedy. And again, when you're watching an action film or a drama a so-called drama, and there is a lot of comedy. It probably is happening because the conflict, the dramatic tension isn't there, and it's being used to distract us from that. My favorite example within the Transformers universe would be that sequence in the first film where the Autobots are tiptoeing around Sam's house because he has to get into his room without the parents noticing and get the cube or whatever information, something that's going to lead them to what they want. And it's like a 20-minute funny sequence, but logically, in that moment, it would just be like, okay, Optimus, reach your hand through the window and take what you need. And there's no drama with the Decepticons at that point. And again, if each of these story tracks have momentum and they're moving forward, in that film, it's very stagnant at that point. So we use comedy in replacing the dramatic tension that isn't there. Now there's this other thread here. We have really a third storyline going on now. And again, basically we're kind of cutting back and forth to trains on the same track, but at different points. And these trains are going to hopefully meet and crash into each other, and we're going to have some drama and conflict. And this is really kind of a second track with another train on it, and hopefully all three of them are going to collide at some point, and we're going to have some nice dramatic, explosive action conflict going on. But now the Decepticons have infiltrated a military base, and they are going to learn the location of Megatron. And that would be easy, because apparently they showed it on TV at the end of the first film. And all you need is a TiVo. You don't even need to break into the Pentagon or whatever top secret base, NORAD, whatever it is. Just get a TiVo and access whatever news report, and they showed Megatron being dumped into the ocean. Because they needed to set up a sequel, and I am not going to forgive that insulting logic. Very annoying. We have an action sequence here where the Tiger puked up some pinballs down the little chimney. Because I guess if you have a top secret base, why not have an obvious open way to access it with the chimney? Santa Claus, I guess, has to make deliveries, even to the military. So we have an action sequence going on there. So we're having genre set pieces also distract us from logical story, motivation, and progression. So we have an action set piece there with the saber-toothed tiger robot and the military, and trying to discover the location of Megatron. So that's our third track. So 3 major tracks, even though there's like the fourth one that's set up at the beginning that really was just there as a teaser. Again, it looked cool. But the whole 17,000 BC, 33 minutes into the film, 34 minutes, really hasn't paid off in any kind of way. So I kind of wish it wasn't even done. Just open it up with the Autobots chasing Decepticons. You can cut 5 minutes off the running time of this film. Now we have Sam having kind of a little possession seizure here where the information within him wants to get out. And this is something that reminds me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Richard Dreyfuss, after he has his encounter with the light, the bright light from above, begins to be obsessed with this mountain, right? The famous mashed potatoes scene. And later he goes to the desert and he finds the mountain where the meeting's going to take place. This is something that you'll find in a lot of just Twilight Zone, Outer Limits kind of stuff. Smaller stories have dealt with this. I don't really recall that many feature films using this technique, but it's kind of been done before. I remember an Amazing Stories, another Steven Spielberg involved project where there was one episode where an older librarian kind of gets zapped with this alien beam, and he just becomes just like this sponge for information. He reads the entire library, and the next day he's like the smartest guy ever, and it's really changing his life until the bright light returns, and basically the aliens used him as an information gatherer, and they just sucked all the information out of him, leaving him as he was before. That also reminds me of one of my favorite Star Trek The Next Generation episodes called The Nth Degree, where Lieutenant Barclay gets zapped by a probe and turns into like the super smart guy, eventually takes over the ship and transports it to like this far section of the galaxy. And it was done because the aliens that influenced him, they don't travel. They bring the travelers to them. So that's the same thing we have going on here. Sam has got this information within him, and now it's kind of just trying to get out, and for some reason, okay, it wants to take cake and be written on the table. Okay. Now we have the hottie former, booty former number 2, hottie number 2, whatever you want to say. This to me is basically what this Victoria's Secret model is going to be in the third movie, but okay, whatever. So we get away from booty former 1, and we go to booty former 2, who has kind of been eyeing Sam the whole time. She's seen him in college. It's been a couple scenes so far. Now, let's just analyze this from a writing logic point of view. We know now that hottie former number 2, booty former number 2, is a T-1000 style transformer that looks human, feels human, and is there to follow Sam around and apparently find the cube or find something. So she sees him at the party writing in the transformer language. And for some reason, she doesn't grab him right there. She doesn't transform into the robot and take him back to Starscream or Megatron or whoever's in charge. Well, it's not Megatron because he's still underwater, but whoever's in charge of the Decepticons, she doesn't take him back. Apparently someone sent her out with orders, put her here in order to do this. We didn't see that scene of, oh, Sam the human is going to be going to college now, so we're going to send you there to be undercover to keep an eye on him because we need the piece of the Ark in order to bring Megatron back or to get the information or to have the location of the Fallen or the secret weapon that's going to destroy the sun and energize Cybertron again or bring the hatchlings back to life. That motivation isn't discussed, explored, or shown in any kind of way. And she goes with Sam and they sit down in Bumblebee, and let's just address this logic issue that for some reason Bumblebee doesn't know when another robot transformer is in his presence. He can't detect that because apparently she's so hot it's distracting even the robot. And for some reason now comedy takes over. Well, not for some reason. We know why comedy is taking over because, as just discussed, each character doesn't have any obvious objective, pursuit, goal that they want at that moment, so there's no reason for them to have conflict. What we have instead is comedy. So we have Bumblebee being jealous and rocking the car and spewing antifreeze all over the girl. Shouldn't that be a sign that maybe this girl isn't human? Antifreeze has just been vomited on you, and you're fine. Your eyes aren't burning, your skin isn't melting, there isn't any kind of bad effect happening from that, and we're fine with that. If you're the hottie former right there, your objective is bring Sam back to the person who sent me to college to follow Sam. So what should have happened there, if we rewrite that sequence, is a fight between hottie former and Bumblebee. And if Bumblebee would have been able to talk, if he wasn't mute, we would have even had more conflict and created organically the next scene, the next step in the story progress. But instead, we have basically in that sequence the hottie former set in motion that she likes Sam, but there's something suspicious about her, that Bumblebee is jealous of Sam not giving him attention, and that Sam is having these inadvertent spouts of a weird language, alien language that is in his brain because he touched this piece of the Ark. Okay, so horrible dramatic writing there, dramatic filmmaking, and comedy basically replaces it and distracts us from noticing it. The next scene is even funnier. Now I'm at 40 minutes and 23 seconds, and the Decepticons are waking up Megatron from the bottom of the ocean. But let's talk about 2 scenes ago. There's this out-of-the-blue moment where Sam and Bumblebee show up at a cemetery where Optimus is there, and he tells Sam there's a war coming, and you need to help me, and even though you don't want to, it's not the choice of great people to do something bigger than themselves. It's the times. It's something great that calls on someone who maybe isn't ready for it to take on that responsibility and do something bigger than themselves. That's the gist of the conversation, but it's totally an unmotivated, it's a payoff without a setup. It's where did this scene come from? The previous time we saw Optimus, he was getting kind of bitched out by the wannabe bad guy from Contact who wants to cancel the program. And the next time we see him, he's meeting with Sam. So there was no contact of Sam saying, hey, I'm having these weird flashes. I got this Transformer language in my brain. What does it mean? He didn't tell that to Bumblebee. Bumblebee didn't contact Optimus. There wasn't any reason for that meeting to take place. And it really didn't set anything up. It didn't set anything into motion. There's no setup for a future payoff. There's no question for a future answer. Here is one of the scenes that I would absolutely keep for a rewrite. We are finally on the Decepticon homeworld. I don't know if this is Cybertron. It's not really mentioned. Maybe it is, but I forgot. Basically, we're at the home of where Decepticons are born. Apparently, they're born in two ways. This very much has like a Matrixy feel, by the way. But they're born from being touched by the cube, and they're also born from these organic kind of sacs. I don't know what the deal with that is. But for some reason, the Energon there's a missing life force that isn't allowing them to flourish. And the drama here, the theme here, the motivation, the stakes are awesome. Finally, we have a scene without any humans that is robot to robot. My initial just inclination here is this is something that the writers thought through, they wrote, and thankfully it survived. It was like it got through the Bay filter of just comedy and excitement and hot girls and making things look cool with the cinematography. An actual element of character and story and mythology somehow made it through that. And this is the scene. 42 minutes into the film, we learn the motivation of the Decepticons. We have a bigger picture of what motivates their actions. And we get to see the Fallen here, and we see the robots in their element. This is what we need more of. We need to focus on this, and the humans can come into this world. It doesn't start with the humans and working backwards. This should be a story dealing with the robots. Now, the filmmakers could have learned a lot from Beast Wars, the Transformers animated TV series that was on sometime in the early 90s, I believe. That would have been great. Watch that. Learn how drama and emotion and theme and story between robots is developed. Hint, it's basically the same way you develop human characters. It's just they don't look human. And stop focusing on the comedy between human characters, as we have here. The next scene, 44 minutes into the film, we have Dwight from The Office. And again, I'm a big fan of Rainn Wilson. He really kills it here. But this is more that dorky comedy. This is basically another hint, another way of telling us, okay, we don't have any overall dramatic storytelling going on here. There's no conflict moving us from scene to scene, so we're going to have some comedy going on to replace that which is missing. So the way that this opens is just from the world of a porn movie where every girl is wanting it and the most ridiculous things make them hot. So the teacher bites the apple, drops it on his boot, it falls to the ground, and a girl with some F-me eyes picks it up and bites it and looks at him, and all the other girls are jealous of her. It's just like, what? Okay, I guess that makes sense. I guess that's what college is. I don't know. It's been a couple years for me. And here we basically have Sam doing the exact same thing he did at the frat party. He has kind of this fit of Transformers Tourette's where he has this information and it needs to get out. So he reads the book in like 5 seconds, which reminds me of the John Travolta movie Phenomenon from like 95. And it also reflects this other movie Powder, which was also 94, 95. Just do a quick search, look them up. Really great movies. Very character-based, thematic. And he spouts out this information. He disagrees with the instructor, but it really doesn't lead anything. The purpose of that scene was basically to show that Sam has been possessed, been programmed by the cube, and he has this important information within him. Well, it's a redundant scene. And that's why you have these little moments of slutty girlness in there. Because it's like, okay, comedy plus hot chicks will distract us from noticing that this scene is basically a repeat of the early scene in terms of story structure. It doesn't really add anything to what is going on at the moment. We've already seen this. So in a rewrite, you would delete that scene. delete it, get rid of it. It does have a nice laugh to it, but we're not here for laughs. We want to have the conflict, the drama, the action that we're expecting here constantly taking place and moving the story forward. So go back to that scene with the hottie former at the frat party and riding in Bumblebee later. That should be an action sequence that spins everything and leads to some organic storytelling. Possibly that there's a fight, the hottie former escapes with Sam, so now Optimus and Bumblebee and the rest of the Autobots have to follow the hottie former to the Decepticon headquarters where they have to rescue Sam. That probably would have made sense. Instead of story progression just being put on pause, and we can cut to this funny stuff where here, again, another example, 47 and a half minutes into the film, we have the remote control little truck Decepticon stepping on mouse traps, and of course there's a reaction shot from a dog. That's a classic old movie trick where just have a dog in a scene, and it's always going to be funny. The audience will just love it. Why not? It's just a total message to us that comedy is replacing drama again in this film. Now we have Booty Former about to fight with the remote control truck here, and I guess we have some pretty decent green screen acting going on here. Booty Former is always sweating and always wearing very revealing clothing. It's an action blockbuster, come on, of course. It's interesting. When I think back to the films that I really love that are epic and in this kind of genre, or attempting to have this kind of feel or impact on us, the audience, you look at Lord of the Rings, the Terminator series, Star Wars, The Matrix. Notice how the females in those stories aren't necessarily the pieces of ass, the decorative hotties. They're actually real characters. And when you don't focus on that, it kind of gets out of the way of the story and the rest of it all is allowed to flourish. And we're allowed to connect with the material on a different level. One of the arguments for any kind of criticism of Transformers or Transformers 2 is that, well, it's just a summer movie, it's robots, it was based on a cartoon, the cartoon was a toy commercial anyways. What do you expect from material that was already kind of bankrupt or cynical in its creation in the first place? It's not necessarily something that was born out of this Shakespearean human condition desire to communicate a fantastic aspect of humanity to us and explore what it means to be alive and all this kind of stuff. And my answer to that is, no, that's just lazy. You can take anything and you can transform it into something that's a little more powerful than what the original version of that was. Great example would be Christopher Nolan's vision for Batman, Tim Burton's vision for Batman, the 1960s TV show version of Batman, the original comic book. Each of those incarnations have a different sensibility to it based on the times, based on the creators, and depending on what your tastes are, you might respond to one or the other more strongly, but it can't be denied that when a filmmaker or a writer or just someone with a vision for a story takes on material, they can shape it in whatever way they want. And they can bring out those elements of humanity from it to us if they desire it. Now here, I'm 51 minutes into the film, and Hottie Former is on the bed with Sam, and we have a pretty awesome shot of her ass and panties as a metallic tail comes out and approaches him, but then for some reason retracts back under her short dress, and Booty Former's at the door, and she gets mad that Sam's cheating on her. And then we have this Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Freddy Krueger tongue come out and wrap itself around Sam's neck. Why? Just the logic in the scene. Let's just talk about what the true motivation of the scene was. The true motivation of this scene was to have a shot of this hottie's ass. Because if you're the Hottie Former here, and you're thinking, okay, I have to get the information in Sam's head back to Decepticon headquarters, why would I bother seducing him? Why would I bother laying on top of him? Why not just transform into my robot self, do the T-1000 transformation, which also doesn't make sense within the Transformers universe, but we'll let it go. for some reason, I'm going to bother doing this whole seduction act when all I really need to do is just forcefully take him and go back to headquarters. It's something that could have been done again in that earlier scene with Bumblebee. But instead, we're delaying, we're using comedy, scenes aren't setting up and paying off, and we're 53 minutes into the film, and technically this is still Act 1. This movie is about 2 hours and 30 minutes, and roughly an hour of it is Act 1. Because there really hasn't been any opponent, objective, main character conflict. Right now we're finally going to bring the pieces together. We have the X-Files lone gunman roommate, and we have Booty Former and now Sam in the library, and they're being chased by Hottie Former. And then the Autobots, who we had a shot just a couple minutes ago on the highway, which is another great car commercial moment. They're coming to Sam's rescue. Now, who knows how they know? There wasn't a scene of Bumblebee communicating to the Autobots or sensing that something's going wrong. So who knows why all this is going on? There's something called off-screen storytelling in movie making. And this goes back to that concept of setting up and paying off. When you end a scene with a setup, with a question, you imply in the audience's mind that things are going to be going on off-screen. When we cut away, that reality continues to exist, continues to move forward. Really quickly, 54 minutes into the movie. Now, they're running out of the library here, and the Hottie Former has just destroyed the library in robot form, shooting laser blasts everywhere and everything. And for some reason, she leaves the library and transforms back into her slutty college girl self. Why? If you're already revealed as the robot, why would you bother transforming back into a disguise that isn't going to fool anybody? It's just another reason for us to have a shot of a hot girl. And then she transforms back into the robot and now attacks them on the car. Okay, so now we're back into a logical story progression here, but just that moment was very strange, and the Hottie Former is run over and smashed by the Booty Former. So we have the Battle of the Formers, the Battle of the Hotties. 55 minutes into the film, a car chase is going on. So now we have this car chase going on here, and the Decepticon helicopter shows up. I believe that's the same chopper from the first film. I don't really remember the characters' names, if you can even call them that. I don't remember these Transformer Decepticon names or the Autobot names because the quote-unquote robot characters don't really have any screen time. They don't have any relationships with each other. They don't have any opportunity to express how they feel about things, what they want. There's no drama going on between the robots. And all we have is comedy within the humans taking our time. Now, this is one of the most ridiculous motivations ever here, is that the helicopter picks up the car, flies it across the river, dumps it into a warehouse, and it falls like 100 feet and crashes. And of course, they're going to be okay. Of course, if I'm the Decepticons, there's some vital information in Sam's brain, and I want to make sure it's maintained. I want to make sure it's safe so I can get at it, because it's going to reveal to me the location of the sun-destroying laser beam. But for some reason, I'm going to drop them off in this warehouse in a car in the most dangerous way possible, where the car would hit the ground and their seatbelts might not be on because they're running away from the Hottie Former and they didn't have time to buckle up, and the airbags might save them, but you can't really take that risk, so how about I just lower it nice and easy? No, that's logic. What we want here is cinematic excitement. We want genre set piece payoff, even if it defies our critical thinking instincts. So the car falls, and thankfully somehow they don't get injured, and they cut it in half. The Decepticons cut the car in half. That's the second time a Transformer's been sawed in two because it looks really cool. And thankfully no one was sitting in the middle of the car. They were all in their seats, and it split perfectly and didn't injure anybody. Here we have kind of a Matrix-y moment. This is totally a ripoff from The Matrix. We are, 57 minutes into the film, and Sam is being interrogated by a spidery-looking Decepticon that basically you can say has been lifted from a mid-'80s film starring Burt Reynolds called Runaway. I believe it was Burt Reynolds or Tom Selleck. I'm just imagining the main character is the guy with the mustache. It's either one of those two guys. And there's like these spidery robots at the end that shoot acid. It's pretty lame, but this robot here reminds me of that. And then we have the Matrix moment when Agent Smith basically drops that kind of squiddy, wormy bug into Neo, and it squirms its way down its throat, and you can kind of see it under his skin. And later, Trinity removes it. So here it's used to basically download the memories, the information from Sam, then it's holographically played for Megatron to see. Okay, I guess that makes sense. It seems like a very convoluted, we have to show this in a cool visual kind of way to get the information out, but I guess we'll go with it. Now, out of nowhere, the Autobots show up. Again, how were they able to track Sam to this location? Makes no sense. But because it looks cool, we're going to go with it. Because it's happening very quickly, we don't have time to think about it. Action, women, and comedy are the three elements that distract our logic centers from sounding the alarm of, this makes no effing sense. Again, look back to your favorite films, your favorite epic adventures, your sci-fi, your fantasy, and you'll find that those movies have logic, have character development, have dramatic cores to them. They do everything right that they should. And here, we're just being distracted and sensory overloaded so that we don't notice how bad it is. But thankfully, we have noticed it for this film, and Razzie Awards were properly given out, but unfortunately, too much box office was rewarded to this film. This sequence here, an hour into the film, very cool battle in the forest. Really can respect the work here on a CGI level. Very talented artists doing their work to make these Transformers look real. And I really believe that Sam is running and there's robots behind him. It looks great. And the battle here with Optimus is fine. The problem here, okay, we're going to have Optimus die. And what we're bringing along here in terms of feeling grief for Optimus is really something that we've gathered from the pre-existing Transformers mythology. It's nothing that has been established in this film. The first film did some decent work in terms of Optimus revealing, okay, here's what I think about Transformers and why we're at war with each other and what it means to have brothers that you don't get along with and why we're here on Earth and here's how I feel about you, Sam. And we don't get that deep into Optimus's soul. We don't have him reveal himself to us that much. But if you take the knowledge of the cartoon series and the spark, right, that's within him, the Optimus spark, I guess that carries his essence, because later it's going to be moved from leader to leader. But you can just say that the essence here of Optimus, I think we really bring along the original series with us. And that's what's being reflected when we're sad at Optimus's death here. This film has not developed Optimus in any really deep way when compared to the first film. Everything that we've gotten is from that first film. An hour and 2 minutes into the film, Optimus rips the head of a Decepticon in half. Very cool image, very well done. It got a lot of cheers from the audience when I was watching this in the theater, and it was a cool moment. The death here, where Megatron stabs Optimus, could have been set up a little bit better. The famous moment that we all remember from the cartoon series is the battle between Megatron and Optimus. And it's really well done because they speak with each other. When you go back to any kind of movie where you have rivals fighting each other, it all goes back to the Wild Wild West. You know, it's that showdown at noon. You want to have both characters. They know about each other. They have a history. They feel a certain way about each other. The only thing here between Megatron and Optimus was at the end of the first film, where Optimus said something like, "I'm sorry, brother," or something along those lines, where he indicated some kind of regret that they were connected, and he was sorry that he had to destroy him or kill him or whatever. That was missed here. Again, it's a lot more interesting if the person we think is evil was at one time good, if they were once side by side they fought for the same cause. And later, one of them just felt betrayed or just went to the dark side. Whatever the motivation is, we want to explore that stuff. Here we have not had anything regarding Optimus. It's been basically 5 scenes. We've seen Optimus 5 times, and he dies. And if we're sad, it's because of what we remember from the first film and from the cartoon series. Now here, an hour and 4 minutes into the film, another great little moment. It's Megatron and Starscream, I believe, on the top of some building in Los Angeles or wherever it is. And we have some conflict going on between robots. It's interesting how that when the time is given for these characters to be in conflict with each other, we feel a stronger connection. We feel that we understand the story more, their motivations, and we become hooked, right? It's a setup for a future payoff. We look forward to what this is setting up. We look forward to what this is establishing. Hour and 4 minutes into the film, I think this is just like a default image that Michael Bay has to include in every one of his films. When in doubt, cut to the sky and have asteroids crashing into stuff. I mean, it is the 3rd film that he's done this in, right? You have Armageddon, Transformers, and Transformers 2. I still hold my belief that this has to be the goofiest way for any alien to arrive on a planet. We're going to basically come in as asteroids and just destroy stuff, basically announcing our presence and saying, hey, we're here. We're not going to try to sneak in and kind of do things on the down low and just be crafty and slowly take over or slowly plot our plan until it's too late for anyone to really do anything. No, we're going to just come in like nuclear missiles and announce our presence with the mushroom clouds of the aftermath. So ridiculous. In terms of a genre set piece, it looks great on the screen when in Paris you see buildings being destroyed and craters being formed. That looks great. But it really makes no story sense. And if these Decepticons had any intelligence, they would just come in under the radar. They probably have stealth. It's funny that a submarine in World War II has more technology than the Decepticons coming to Earth. But hey, at 1 hour and 6 minutes into the movie, if they didn't come in with asteroid intensity, they wouldn't have been able to take out this destroyer in the middle of the ocean that looks really cool when it's sinking. You have the planes on it, aircraft carrier, whatever it is. It looks really cool to see that thing sinking. And all the planes sliding off of it and just it going underwater. And doing the Titanic little shot in the distance as the tail just kind of lifts out of the water. And we basically have a shot here from Titanic where the camera spins around and we watch the ship go into... Yeah, that's almost identical to the final shot of Titanic. So go back and watch James Cameron's Titanic, and it's virtually the same shot. And the Fallen is on the tail end by the propellers. Wow. Again, looks great. Makes no sense. Because the Decepticons are after Sam's parents. For some reason, they weren't able to get the information from Sam's head when they did the Matrix ripoff proctology examination. And the Autobots managed to get Sam out of the way to safety. So now I'm the Decepticons, and we're going to go after Sam's parents. We can find Sam's parents in Paris, but we can't find Sam with the Autobots. Is that because there's a dampening shield around the Autobots? Is that because, as Bumblebee wasn't able to sense the hottie former when she sat in him earlier, it also works in the reverse way, where the Decepticons can't sense the Autobots? The more logic is applied to this movie, the more confusing it gets. When you stare into the abyss of Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, the abyss of Transformers Revenge of the Fallen stares back at you and annihilates any critical functioning of your brain. It makes us into vegetables that just smile and laugh whenever the electric shocks of awesome action, half-naked women, and funny doggy humping comedy occur. 1 hour, 9 minutes into the Razzie Award-winning Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, we cut to the military and the simulcast of the Decepticons interrupting all programs to announce that they want Sam. Okay, I guess so. I guess that works. And we have some ADD editing of satellites beaming information everywhere and people walking on streets, and this guy's using his little handheld media device to watch the footage of Sam being called out by the Decepticons. Frustration. I'm very tempted to just turn this off right now. But we have to do it for our movie future. We have to defeat the illogic and just the insulting level of story effort that barely went into this film. Oh, we have these horrible characters. I guess when Optimus was recruiting for his Autobot army, he just went into the alleys of Cybertron and recruited crackheads because these two characters are so insulting and borderline offensive in so many ways. It's like I don't even want to go along the lines of criticism that those characters create. Let's just say those two characters were one of the worst ideas in cinematic history. And again, they were purely created because of the quote-unquote dorky comedy need that Bay referred to in the article that was read at the beginning of our movie night. Comic relief. Unfortunately, comic relief implies that there needs to be a relief from the emotional effects created by dramatic conflict. The problem here is that there is no dramatic conflict between characters, so we don't need any comic relief. We need dramatic relief. How about that? Is that a term that's ever used in filmmaking? Can we have dramatic relief? Because all this is comedy. We need someone to bring the emotions, to bring the humanity, to make this epic. That's how you really make it epic. Is it too much of a stretch to say that let's just make this Braveheart meets Transformers? If Peter Jackson could make Lord of the Rings resonate with us, could make it an award-winning, Oscar-winning trilogy, because you know that each of those films could have won the Oscar every year they were nominated, but Return of the King won all the awards as a way of saying, hey, okay, this is really an Oscar shower for the whole trilogy. It's not just for this one film. If Peter Jackson were to make Transformers, would it be a different film? If Christopher Nolan were to make Transformers, would it be different? James Cameron, Bryan Singer, the Coen brothers, Paul Thomas Anderson, Darren Aronofsky. Anyone with a complete, well-rounded cinematic toolbox at their disposal, if they were to take on this story material, would the resulting film be better than these first two? The answer is yes. If Pixar made Transformers 3, would it be better than the first two films? Absolutely. It's not the concept or the idea. It's the execution. It's the investment in characters. It's the willingness to take the material seriously, to base it in drama, then take it to that next level of fantasy or sci-fi, whatever the genre is. All quality filmmaking is drama plus genre. And Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, it signals that in our current movie environment, what matters most is a property that can easily be communicated to an audience, that can entice them easily, and hopefully has some relatability. It's based on something that exists already in the mind of a potential audience member, which is why we have so many remakes, reboots, and adaptations. If a property has already established itself in another medium, that means it's become a success. The Da Vinci Code, a huge, huge book. Of course it's going to be made into a movie because there's so many fans and they want to see how that becomes realized. Everyone's read the book, they've imagined it for themselves, and now they want to see what it would look like in an objective cinematic reality instead of the subjective where everyone who reads a book has their own visualization of how a character looks, of how they act, of how it all comes together. That's not to say that if something is remade, rebooted, or adapted, that it can't be great. What's happening now is that there's too much reliance on the opening weekend box office, on the marketing of a familiar title, of a familiar property, of basically arousing our attention to the point where the only way that we can satisfy that is to go to that opening weekend. We get so heightened. It's no accident that the term buzz is used when creating excitement for a film, because we're getting intoxicated. We're getting hyped up over seeing something. We're getting teased. So we go to the theater opening weekend because it's been built up in us. We're literally buzzing from it, and the only way to relieve ourselves is to see it. Now, whether that's relieved in a good or bad way, whether the film is satisfactory or disappointing, that's a whole different subject. But when we go, we're basically wanting to relieve the pressure that's been built up as a result of the marketing, of the anticipation, the teasing. And that's the main objective of StoryCorp, right? Again, Hollywood, H-Wood, but it's really StoryCorp in our little movie world here because StoryCorp's mission is to create films that are easily marketed, easily profitable, and the secondary concern is quality of story. So as long as these films can be a hit opening weekend, if the money can be taken in very much the same way that a scam, a sort of Ponzi scheme or pyramid scheme, just get the investment and get out before everyone realizes what's happened. So most films nowadays, most blockbusters especially, make their money within the first 2 weeks. And then after that, it's like everyone has that buyer's remorse. We all feel like we've been used. We haven't been respected. And until there is a conscious and active decision on our part to be like, okay, we're not going to reward a film right away. How crazy would it be, or how interesting would it be if a film made money its third or fourth week at the box office? If audiences waited a week or two to hear about the reviews, to hear word of mouth, and then decided, okay, I'm going to invest my money, I'm going to go check it out. Instead of being hypnotized or put into a trance by the marketing and almost tricked into seeing it opening weekend only to be later disappointed. So currently, that's the state that we're in. We're in this opening weekend, just have a familiar title, a property that we all can kind of relate to, stars that are in it that we'd like, hot girls that we want to see on a 70-foot screen, cool set pieces, genre set pieces that deliver, and we'll check it out, and whatever happens after that, we really don't care about it. Or we'll just feel like, that's just how things are supposed to be. That's the saddest thing right now, is that that's how things are supposed to be. No, it's not how they're supposed to be. It's how they've become because we've let them become that way. If we're better educated, if we require more, if we have standards, then stories will raise to that standard because StoryCorp wants our money. So if we say, we'll give you our money if you raise the level of your product, then the product's level is going to become raised, and we'll be rewarded for that. But it starts with us. It starts with our awareness, education, knowledge, and having this critical eye and having some standards and saying, you know what, I'm not just going to accept anything. Yeah, it's a fun kind of ride in a very just like passive, okay, I'll just forget about everything and just look at cool things on the screen. But it could be so much more. So with that said, I'm going to step down from the movie-loving soapbox right there and get back into the film. And again, it's not like we missed anything. We're an hour and 20 minutes into it. And we've just seen a shot of John Turturro's ass. So at least we can say that Michael Bay is an equal opportunity offender. We've had a shot of Booty Former, Hottie Former, and John Turturro. We've had a shot of their assets. And just goes to show it, John Turturro is a great actor, but if the material isn't there, it's not like it's going to really... the actor can't transform what's on the page. John Turturro being introduced into the story is a nice kind of little callback to the first film. It's, again, comic relief to see him working in a deli. He was a member of whatever Men in Black CIA kind of group, and now he's been demoted and he works in a deli, but in his basement he has all this paperwork and information because, of course, if you get demoted and you leave the secret organization, they're going to let you take as many files as you want, no problem. Here in the bathroom, we go back to the dorky comedy. We go back to the comic relief, or let's just call this, in this film, it's not comic relief again because we don't have any drama, so we don't need to have any comedy relieving us. Our emotions aren't being pulled this way and that, and we don't feel drained. Usually comic relief kind of lightens the mood for a moment, and it allows us to take that deep breath and get ready for that next emotional impact. Here we have comedy distraction. And the scene in the bathroom here where the lone gunman X-Files guy tasers himself and there's pants around the ankles and it looks funny, haha, is more comic distraction. And this is such a goofy scene here where they're basically in the hangar looking for one of the originals, looking for one of the ancients, and they're all running and there's dramatic music and it seems so cool and like we're moving towards something. Hour and 23 minutes in the film. Technically, this would be a midpoint. Usually at the midpoint of a film, the path for a main character's objective, the way that they're going to get that objective becomes clear. And here, that's going to happen when this original ancient Transformer guy tells them where the location of the Sun Destroyer, the energy harvester, whatever this device is called. We don't really know because, as we all know from seeing the film, it's never used and it's never really described. So the path becomes clear here when you have this ancient one going along with them to Egypt and saying, this is where we need to go because this is where the Decepticons are going to go, this is what the Fallen wants to do, and the only way to save the Earth. Again, the stakes are never really defined here. I don't think that they're mentioned. We kind of get the sense that, okay, if this thing's used, it's going to destroy the sun or something's going to happen that's bad for our planet. It would be nice if it was a little more clearly stated. But, oh well. Who cares about logic when you have comedy and all that good stuff going on in this film? And here we have the Autobots showing up in the hangar area. And it is frustrating again that Bumblebee and the other cars, the other car commercial models, don't have any voices, don't have any character, there's no drama, there's no relationships going on between them. But we know the path, it's a straight path here. So here, basically, if we go back to our screenplay structure, we've had the teaser storyline from the beginning, 17,000 year BC. Storyline 2, Optimus helping the humans capture the Decepticons. Storyline 3, Sam in college with the hottie former following him and his parents kind of having that empty nest syndrome. And now all of those lines are starting to come together. The hottie former's been destroyed, Optimus has been killed, the military and that idea of hunting down Decepticons has kind of been abandoned. And we do have the Fallen here, but that opening sequence really didn't lead to anything. It kind of just teased us, but it really didn't establish anything in terms of the story progression. in terms of setup and payoff and story development. Here we have more comedic distraction. Hour and 26 minutes into the film, an old fogey Transformer inadvertently releases his parachute, and he gets pulled backwards. Ha ha ha. Okay, it's like, basically, when rewriting a screenplay, there's this idea of rewriting it in terms of passes. You have to rewrite it one element at a time. So if I have the script for Transformers, and I want to add more comedy into it, I'm going to go through with the idea that I'm going through every scene and I'm only going to pay attention to how I can make something funny in each scene. That's my goal. So that's how you would do a comedy pass rewrite of this screenplay. And that's what seems to have happened here. It's like every scene, whenever there's story, whenever there's some focusing on objective and characters and some drama between them, it's like someone came in and said, let's have something funny happen here. Because they didn't have the faith and the trust that what was there dramatically was enough. And for some reason, an hour and 27 minutes into the film, this ancient Transformer has teleportation ability. And ha ha ha, everyone gets transported in the funniest way possible. And look, Booty Former is laying on top of the lone gunman, and they're all spread eagle, and now it's a chance for a joke. And the other Transformers are bouncing all over the place, and wow, it's so funny. Okay, I guess. They're here, they're in Egypt. And for the third or fourth time, we have Sam practicing his Transformers alphabet. He writes it out in the grass, and I guess Geezer Transformer recognizes it, and that makes him transport everyone to this location. Now we become focused. So, from this point of the story on, I do have to give the film credit in that it does become more focused in terms of, okay, here's the objective, here's the opponent, here's what we're going after. It starts to become a little less comedic. And that is a good thing, but looking back at the first act of this film, which was an hour long, usually in screenplay structure, 30 minutes is too much. And we all have it within us unconsciously to recognize when a film is delaying its act 2. Usually after 15 to 20, 30 minutes, if you find yourself saying, this film is boring or nothing's happening, and you're getting distracted, it's because that setup of all the character elements, those horses being lined up at the starting gate, are happening too slowly. And Act 1 isn't solidifying so that you can have that main character with objective and opponent, and that starting gate gun going off so we can have Act 2 start to happen. Act 2 happens when you have main character pursuing objective and an opponent stopping them, trying to stop them. Finally, here we start to get some clarity in terms of that area. Now we have an hour and 30 minutes into the film. We finally have clarity regarding what the opening sequence, that teaser moment of 17,000 BC, was about. We see how the Fallen tried to steal some sort of power amulet thing. I'm not even going to bother trying to remember what it's called. Because again, if the movie doesn't respect me, I do not respect it. So we get the story now. We get the objective. Basically what we're having here is the objective, opposition, main character setup happening. Act 1 is being set up right now. We get the backstory. Okay, Sam, a long, long time ago, Roland Emmerich made 10,000 BC. And in some uncut footage, there were these Transformers that landed, and they had this cool-looking kind of metal object, and it was the key to this machine, and if you activated it, it drained the sun of all its energy. And there was one bad guy who wanted to take it and destroy, but the other ones were good, and they realized this was the wrong thing to do, so they defeated the bad guy, and then they hid it. They, for some reason, went together and self-destructed and formed some kind of molten cave, and they kept it in there. Okay, I don't know why that makes sense. It is supposed to make sense. We'll just go with it. It doesn't really, but... And if we had time to rewrite the film, we could start with these questions and base it in logic and take these fantastic ideas and make them make sense. But we have a very clear path now. Notice how everyone is unified, and from this point on, the last hour of the movie really flies by because we have all those elements clearly established. The problem with the first act here, the hour and 15, 20 minutes that feel slow to us, is that it just takes so long for all this to come together. Again, you basically start out with 3 movies, 3 storylines, and they converge into one. The problem with each of those storylines, because there's nothing wrong with doing that kind of structure, that's fine. The problem is that each of those storylines don't have a clear dramatic structure that work. It would be great if the hottie former was chasing Sam around college and there was some fighting going on, and if Optimus was more involved and that whole thing with the military and searching for Decepticons, if that was a little more well developed, we could see how the drama in those scenes and the conflict would keep us engrossed, keep our attention locked, and it would all just kind of funnel like rivers flowing into one lake or one ocean. That would be fine. That forward momentum, that current of drama would continue. Would have no problem with that. Unfortunately, each storyline is not thought through in terms of the structure, and it's only when everyone gets unified here at the midpoint that the film starts to take on some momentum and dramatic power, and we really start to feel like, okay, scene to scene, it's like, okay, what happens in this scene is a setup, boom, it gets paid off over here, bam, and we're really starting to connect to everything, and it's making a lot of sense. Now let's just jump ahead, because I don't want to run out of time to discuss this. The end of the film. Isn't it really a shock? I mean, a huge disappointment that this device, which is basically tied in pretty creatively. Okay, I always like when movies do this where they take something from history and they spin it, right? They're like, okay, the pyramids are a mystery. So you have Stargate in 1994 or 93, whenever that was, taking this idea that where the pyramids were landing docks for alien ships. Pretty cool idea. Here we have the pyramids are covering up, or this pyramid is covering up, this weapon that the Transformers put here thousands of years ago. Pretty cool idea. The problem here is one of the most basic laws of dramatic writing has been ignored. And I think it's a Chekhov quote. The Russian writer Chekhov said that if a gun is introduced in the first act, it has to go off in the third act. So if you set something up, make sure you pay it off, because this is where frustration for an audience occurs when there is a setup that wasn't paid off. Confusion occurs when there is a payoff that wasn't set up. So we were confused when Optimus and Sam with Bumblebee met in the cemetery, because it's like, okay, this is a payoff from some scene that we didn't see, and there's motivation here that wasn't established, so why are they meeting? Now, frustration is going to occur at the end when that Decepticon with the swinging testicles is crawling up the pyramid and everything's crumbling. I think that's Devastator, right? Even though, again, another frustrating thing, lack of respect for source material. That's not Devastator, but I guess we'll just call him that. And if it isn't Devastator, I'm mistaken, and it's because the characters didn't have any memorable lines or relationships, so there's no reason to remember their name. The only way I would know these characters' names is if I looked up the credits on IMDb. Usually you should know the characters' names because of the dramatic tension and the relationships in the film. But our frustration from a setup that wasn't paid off is when the device is never used. So it's the Ark in Indiana Jones, the Ark of the Covenant, and we actually get to see it open up, and the wrath of God, the fury of God just comes and melts everybody and destroys everyone around Indiana Jones. We want to see the Death Star in Star Wars. It's like, okay, this thing can destroy planets. Imagine if in Star Wars the Death Star never showed its power, showed its capability. So if it didn't destroy the planet early on, when it's circling in orbit, about to have a clear shot at the rebel base, that tension would not be there within us if we didn't see its capabilities earlier. So here, while it's been hinted to us at what the power of this device is, or why it needs to be used, the fact that it never powers up, that it never actually goes off, I mean, just do something cheesy and have it go off but miss the target. We want to see it be used, or just have the Fallen get thrown into it and destroyed. Have it be used somehow. It has to go off. And that's one of the biggest disappointments of this film, is that you introduce this idea to us and it never gets paid off. I mean, it's one of the most anticlimactic endings ever for a big budget film. So disappointing. I think that goes back to the quote here where Bay promises that the crescendo of the third film is going to really kick our butts. It's going to be memorable. Well, it's got to make up for two films, because there really wasn't anything too memorable at the end of the first one. Megatron being destroyed or being captured, being defeated, and then being thrown in the ocean, but nothing too awesome. Even Independence Day did the right thing, where the mother spaceship was blown up at the end. It's such basic mainstream movie summer blockbuster storytelling. Here we have more comedy relief. Hour and 40 minutes into the film, we have more comic relief, where that dude from Las Vegas, that TV show, I think he's married to Fergie, is getting some karmic revenge against the bureaucrat from Contact, the James Woods character, where he puts a parachute on him and he ejects him from the plane. Ha, that's awesome. The a-hole got what was coming to him. And why isn't Jon Voight in this movie? Can someone explain? I would like to see Jon Voight back. I know he's kind of getting a little bit old, and he's always in these Jerry Bruckheimer, Michael Bay films, but just throw him back in here. Instead, we get the poor man's replacement. This guy kind of looks like that dude from Die Hard 2. I know that's kind of a weird reference. That guy's a senator now. I just remember him in Die Hard 2 as the air traffic control leader, and he has that kind of deep voice, and he was running for president last term. You know who I'm talking about. He's kind of got that deep voice, bald. He looks like the Army commander guy here. If you don't get the reference, it's not the end of the world. Here we have the temple. The Autobots show up to the temple. An hour and 41 minutes into the film, apparently Geezer Transformer led them here. Important thing to mention here. Let's ask ourselves a question. What are the Decepticons doing at this moment? The answer is, I'm not sure. I don't really know. And that's a sign of the failure of the dramatic structure of this film. Because again, anytime we cut from the main character should be in pursuit of an objective if we are in Act 2. So when we cut away from the main character, we know, okay, they're going to this place because they're trying to get whatever it is they want. When we cut to the opponents, they should also be going after what they want. They should be planning to stop the main character, or maybe they're on the verge of getting what the main character wants. The opponents should also be in motion. Here in hour 42 minutes, they're in the temple, sacred place, and the two crackhead Transformers decide to start fighting each other. Again, Optimus was really desperate for Autobots, and he just kind of didn't bother training anybody. He's just like, okay, you want to be part of my army? Okay, fine. You're part of it. I don't care what your credentials are. For some reason, a fight breaks out. It's a big distraction, and it's a way for the wall to be broken so that they reveal the ancient ones that molted into some protective little thing where the key to the weapon is being hidden. Okay, I guess so. I'll buy that. So where are the Decepticons? What are they doing right now? Always remember that every character has to be in constant motion, moving towards some kind of goal. This interior here kind of reminds me of Aliens. A lot of metallic, skeletal effects going on here. That adds to our tension and the anticipation of dramatic conflict. Basically, again, we're cutting from the bad guy in a Western tying the girl to the railroad tracks, and then we're cutting to the hero on the horse, riding as hard as he can to get there and save her. That's what the effect of the drama is that we're going for. We cut from opponents to main character to opposition. The back and forth is what gives us that sense of trains that are about to collide. So when we cut to John McClane in Die Hard, okay, his strategy is I'm going to go to the roof and see what they were working on. And when we cut back to Hans Gruber and Carl, they're saying, okay, why don't we check the roof and make sure that the explosives are okay? So now we know, John McClane's going to the roof. So are the bad guys, the opponents. We can expect some conflict in a few moments. Always cut back between these two. Always keep track of the horses. When it comes down to that final lap, the announcers are giving us the play-by-play of the horses that are neck and neck. They're trying to beat each other. They're really racing to get to that finish line. So why don't we have some footage here of the opponents in action? Because it goes back to that the opponents don't know what the main characters are doing. The main characters don't know what the opponents are doing. And they can't really be strategizing against each other. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need to know exactly what they're doing. If you watch a World War II film, like if you watch Patton or something, and we cut to the Nazi base and they're saying, okay, Patton is notorious for doing this kind of strategy and everyone under his command will fight to the death. And then we cut back to Patton and he says, well, the Nazis are going to expect me to do this, so I want to do this. They don't necessarily know what they're doing, but they're anticipating moves and they're strategizing against each other and they're setting things in motion so we can anticipate conflict coming up. Here we need that to be happening early on. And the way that you do that, if we were to rewrite this, we go back to page 1 and we take that scene with the Fallen on the home world or wherever they're at, where the hatchlings aren't growing and they're dying, which, by the way, gives us some empathy for our opposition. And that's the coolest thing. When you can make the audience care about the opponent and kind of be a little bit on the fence of like, I know I'm supposed to root against this evil person, but part of me is like, I can kind of understand where they're coming from, and I kind of want them to get what they want, but I really should be rooting for the hero here. When you can create that in an audience, that's where the fun of watching a movie really, really lies. It's like, okay, great. I like Hans Gruber in Die Hard. It's just, he's a very interesting opponent. In many ways, he's very smart, very charismatic, and it's like, you know what, it's too bad that somewhere along the line, his soul got corrupted, and he decided to turn to this side of evil. Again, it's going back to Darth Vader. Deep down inside, there was a good person, but somehow they were seduced by the dark side. And if you can reveal that light, that little hint of potential, of goodness, of, you know what, somewhere there is a real person that's just been twisted a little bit, then you get us to be like, wow, I really want to root for this person, or I'm having a harder time rooting against them all the time. That's where some interesting emotions can happen within us as we're watching this. And that's when filmmaking is at its best. It's really pushing all the buttons. It's really making us be invested on multiple levels and not making it easy, making us squirm in a lot of ways. So go back to the beginning of this, establish that scene with the Fallen on the planet so we get their motivation, then have the setup be, okay, here's what you need to do on Earth. Go to Earth and wake up Megatron. So boom, next scene, bam. They infiltrate the base, they wake up Megatron. Now go find Sam because he's got the piece, because somehow we can sense it. And with the piece, we'll find the location of the reactor back on Earth because it's been so long and we forgot about it and the Egyptians covered it over with the stones for the pyramid. And here's why we can't locate it ourselves, establish that. And so now, bam, next, that's the setup and payoff. The next setup, we go to Sam. We try to get the piece from him and have it be very focused. There's no distractions with comedy. There's no unnecessary detours with shots of the hottie and all that kind of stuff. If you send some kind of infiltration T-1000 unit, the first sign that Sam has the piece of the cube, boom, you grab him, you bring him back to Megatron. They infiltrate his mind, they get the information. See us, Sam, we don't need you. They would probably kill Sam so that the information couldn't be shared with the Autobots, unless the Autobots intervene and save Sam, which, hey, it makes sense and used to have some conflict. So then it's the Decepticons off to Egypt. So notice how quick and easily structured that is. At the same time, you can rewrite the Autobots storyline. They are on Earth, they're helping the military, they're searching for Decepticons. We need a little bit of backstory about why they can't go back to Cybertron, why they're marooned here on Earth. They should know about the hatchlings. How do the Autobots reproduce? Why is it that the hatchlings are all Decepticons? Again, how do Autobots get created? What is the bigger goal for the Autobots? They're not just here to protect the humans. There's a war on Cybertron going on. What is the basis of it? Why does it exist? Who's to blame? Give us a little bit of that knowledge so we can start to incorporate it into the bigger picture. We know in Star Wars what the deal is. We know that the Empire took over and there's a rebel alliance trying to fight the Empire, and that the Emperor Palpatine was a senator once and he took control dictatorship style. Really cool, we know that. We know that in The Matrix, the humans created artificial intelligence and it got too smart and it wanted to destroy all humans, and there was a war and the humans went underground, and now reality is a computer program. If you don't establish that, we're going to be sitting there thinking, what does this all mean? It doesn't make any sense. Just take a minute to have some exposition, but do it in a dramatic way. We will be relieved of the need to keep asking these questions. Also, the end of the first film established Starscream leaving back to Cybertron, or whatever Decepticon base. So why not continue that right away? Why not have Starscream do a power grab, try to take over? Instead, you create this whole thing of the Fallen, which seems to come out of nowhere. Why not continue what happened at the end of the first film? Well, because the first film didn't establish its mythology strongly enough. There wasn't enough material to fill in all the blanks that we have in our minds, to answer all the questions that we have. So now in the sequel, we have to start to create some of this more mythology, and it's really just one scene. There is one scene of mythology in this movie, and that's when we have that moment of the hatchlings dying on that alien world. That's pretty ridiculous, because if you're doing any kind of trilogy, we all know that the first film has the most exposition / backstory / setup in it. If you look at Fellowship of the Ring, we really are established with what the whole world is about, what this universe can and can't do, and the overall objective, who the opponent is, what's at stake, so that in the second film, we're not asking those questions. We're really following the journey of the characters and its present moment. Oh, that's so goofy. I'm at an hour and 53 minutes into the film, and we have the Constructicons in the quarry here. And for some reason, all of them have the Decepticon symbol. That's always something that defies logic. Again, going back to the cartoon, it was just a great way to sell toys, that the Decepticons have this kind of symbol and the Autobots have this kind of symbol. But in reality, if you're in that universe, it's like, why would we have these symbols on us if we're all Transformers? I just love how the cement truck has the Decepticon logo on it. It's so cheesy. But that's kind of the payoff that we want. Again, I guess you can follow logic only so far until you have to deliver on our expectations of the adaptation, that, hey, the toys and the cartoons used to have these elements to them, so why not include them? Going back to the rewrite, establish off the bat the Autobots with that mythology. Okay, why are they in this state? What are they trying to accomplish here? They're capturing the Decepticons, and they're destroying them. They're trying to turn them to their side. If there's no more Transformers being born, why would you continue to destroy each other? That's a whole nother question. And if these questions weren't answered, it would not distract us in the film. It would only make the film stronger. Again, think back to your favorite movies of this type, and the ones that are really thought out are the ones that work the best. Transformers 1 and 2 are basically great action set-piece films, great CGI accomplishments, but horribly executed stories with one-dimensional characters and barely existing mythology/realities. The sad thing about this saga, this franchise, is that we basically get sucked into wanting to see it on the big screen because we want to experience Transformer blank on the big screen. So here we heard that Soundwave and Devastator were going to be in the movie. So it's like, wow, I really want to check that out. And we see it, and it's like, Devastator doesn't look anything like itself. And Soundwave, okay, it was a boombox in the cartoon series. Of course, that was the 80s. It's not going to make sense today. It's a satellite now. We can deal with that. It's pretty decent. But as a character, really nothing. There's a couple scenes here and there. All of the robots in this film, all the Transformers, have zero relationships with each other, barely any with the humans, and it's a complete failure in that respect. Because of the missing relationships between the robots, no overarching mythology and bigger story was established, and we have no context with which to root for or against anybody. We're just following these human characters doing funny things, having some funny moments with robots occasionally, and there's some great action set pieces here and there. Wow, that looks cool. Now let's admit right here, when Devastator turns into a big vacuum cleaner in the quarry and starts sucking everything in, it looks great. Again, hats off, standing ovation to everyone involved in making this a CGI reality. Really looks great, amazing. Totally takes cinema to a new level in terms of what can be made into a reality. The imagination has no boundaries anymore on the big screen. This is proof of that. The problem is that it needs to be balanced with story and logic and characters, and this is what happens when it doesn't. Let's ask right now, what are the characters moving towards? What are they fighting for? We know that Sam is trying to bring back Optimus, and we know the only way to do that is to take these disintegrated ashes of that metal little artifact and pour it over Optimus or do whatever, and somehow he'll come back to life because the Fallen could not return to Earth because there was a Prime here. So okay, I guess we'll buy that logic. And it looked great when whatever his name is, Autobot, popped out of the eye of the Hoover vacuum cleaner Decepticon. Looked really cool. Nice moment. But it really means nothing to us. And here Sam's parents show up because it's like, okay, for some reason we have to bring them here. We're going to hold them hostage. And what is the motivation now? Why do we need to hold them hostage? Because Sam has the key and we want him to give it over to us. So start back in terms of a rewrite from the beginning of establishing the Autobots wanting something very clearly. Maybe they're hunting down the Decepticons because they need more information. They want to find out where this energizing, stealing, sun-destroying device is at. That's fine, and that makes sense. So they're doing two things at once. They're protecting the Earth. So from the humans' point of view, from the military point of view, they have some allies. They're capturing Decepticons. But from their own point of view, they're searching for this device that's going to help them bring the hatchlings to life and save Cybertron and the Transformer race. Maybe it's sort of like Children of Men, where there's no more babies being born and there's sort of this hopelessness going on within the Transformer culture. Maybe. If you just mention that, it's not the end of the world. And here, this looks pretty cool. 2 hours into the film, we have a fight going on with Bumblebee, who, again, cannot talk, so he has no personality, and we are not really connecting with them. That's the main way we connect to characters, is through their speech and their emotions. So when we know what Bumblebee stands for and what he believes in, we will connect with him a little bit more. We'll know why he's fighting, and we will cheer for him when he defends his beliefs. The first film had a big-time problem whenever it came to filming fights. it was always like super close up. All we see are gears churning. Whatever happened to a nice wide shot so we can see the punches and the kicks and the flips? It's like when you're watching WWE or UFC, the camera does not go close up into the fists and the chests and the faces. It stays wide so we can see the whole ring and we can see every maneuver. From time to time it gets close so we can see a close-up as someone's in a headlock and we see the pain and grimace on their face. But whenever it goes back to action, we have to cut wide again. This film did improve in that area. The first film is really horrible in terms of the way the fights were filmed. Kudos on correcting that, but there's a lot more going on in this film that needs correcting. And Sam meets back up with his parents here. They're just thrown in because they need to be thrown in. There's really no logical motivation for them to be there. Thematically, if this was to be rewritten, from the point of view of Sam and his parents, it's really about a teenager going to college, becoming their own person, growing up, not being dependent on the family. So if there was a moment when they meet later on in the film, why not have that main character be a little bit different than they were when they initially were with their parents? Too much to ask for, I guess, right? Here we have some great fighting, and basically this scene is exactly the same scene from the first film when Scorponok, the Scorpion Decepticon, was fighting with the cast from Las Vegas. It looks exactly the same. We get the same screams, missile launchers, all that kind of stuff going on. It's like, okay, just cut to cookie cutter action sequence. We'll enjoy it, but it is leading to nothing. It's just a big distraction. There's really nothing at stake. A movie should feel like the championship game of whatever sport, of any sporting event. It should be Game 7 of the NBA Finals. It should be Game 7 of the NHL Finals. It's always that bottom of the ninth, 2-out World Series. This is it for the championship. There is no game next. Whatever the story, every movie is the championship game. That's why the stakes always have to be high. We have to feel the pressure that, if someone loses, if someone wins, they're going to get this trophy. They're going to get this objective. We know who the opponents are. We know they're always fighting for every single basket or ball and strike or goal, whatever it is. This isn't a playoff. A movie is the championship game. At 2 hours and 4 minutes, there's the female Transformer. I think her name begins with an A. Arcee, if that sounds right. Again, I don't know because there's no dialogue. She's there for 1 second and she gets shot. So really cool they had more Transformers, but it didn't add anything to the relationships and the overall drama, unfortunately. And here we have the infamous scene where Transformer with the testicles swinging around is climbing up the pyramid, apparently to unlock the weapon, and we're about to be let down in the biggest way because the weapon, again, will not fire. We're cutting to the military in the water on the destroyer, and they're going to be launching some missiles. John Turturro's character is calling in some kind of airstrike or some missile launch. And that's acceptable. It makes sense. One scene has a setup, the other one has a payoff. It's dramatic. It's leading to something that we can anticipate. It's a question that's going to be answered. Good, but in the bigger structure, this has been a very haphazard way to put together a film and to create a movie. So if we rewrite this, we have the Decepticon path very clearly. Now the Autobot path would be they also have to get to this weapon. And Sam, the third storyline, has to be thought through. So I would propose that for this film, with Sam going off to college, it would have been cool if he would have been a little more selfish in terms of his characterization. If we take that scene in the cemetery where Optimus says, sometimes you have to step up to the responsibility. Sometimes life is unfair. Sometimes fate calls on you to meet it and you can't control it. Sam is an average American kid who wants to go to college and live the frat lifestyle and have the parties and all that kind of good stuff. But there's this bigger thing that's calling to him. And he's annoyed. He doesn't want to have the responsibility. Make him someone who is fighting against Optimus. Make him someone who is kind of a jerk now. He's had a taste of the fun life, and he wants more of that. It's just a little twist to put on his character, and that can start to inform him. And as the bigger picture unfolds, that there's things more important than just having a good time, then it starts to affect his character. And as he's called on towards the end to make the sacrifice to save Optimus or to bring Optimus back to life, maybe there's something within him. It's going to be believable if it's logically set up. He has to sacrifice his life to bring back Optimus, and the Prime is the only one that can defeat the Fallen. Do it. Have Sam sacrifice himself. Something that proves that he's bigger than himself, and it shows his character growth. It's just something little. We don't need to spend every scene on it. It doesn't need to turn into Magnolia or Ordinary People. It doesn't need to be some kind of hardcore drama. But make it human. Make it a challenge for the main character. Don't make it easy. And it will be a little more rewarding in the end. Because we can ask this question: if you take out this character and you replace this person with someone else, is it the same movie? Do things happen exactly the same way? The answer should be no, because you can ask the question, take my life, take your life, our lives. We are where we are because of who we are and how we react to conflict and how we respond to challenges. And who we are is a result of what we've been through. So if we take someone else who's been through different experiences and put them in our place, they would not be in the same spot we are, because their decisions and their responses would be different from ours. If you change the character, you change the movie. 2 hours and 10 minutes into the film, Scorpion Transformer returns. It looks cool when the sand is shooting up in the air like that, but what's the motivation? He just comes out of nowhere. Wow, that was really great that he still exists. And he jumped into the gut of Geezer Transformer and destroyed him, but Geezer Transformer punched him in the head and smashed him. Okay, so everyone's dying, and I guess that's what you're supposed to do in a sequel. In the second movie, it's supposed to be darker. Oh, John Turturro staring at the demolition balls. 2 hours and 10 minutes and 30 seconds into the film. Ah, jeez. Here we have the cool laser cannon, and just as the testicle transformer is about to reveal the weapon, it gets blown to bits in the most anticlimactic way ever. Wouldn't it have felt a little more rewarding if Optimus had been brought back to life and it was a battle between the two? Megatron and the Fallen should be battling each other. Optimus and his team should be involved in the fight. Basically, all the Transformers are just on the side here, and it's a human fight. So basically, this really isn't Transformers. This title is very misleading, because while there are robots in this film, they really don't do much, especially in this final sequence. Lack of dramatic storytelling has led to such an anticlimactic ending, and we have another missile strike at 2 hours and 12 minutes that looks exactly like the one in the first film, where the cast of Las Vegas is running away from it, and some of the Decepticons are getting blown up. Looks really cool, but it would have been more rewarding if the Autobots were the ones fighting with the Decepticons, and their personal relationships and established histories were also at battle at the same time. Megatron here is being blasted by a tank. By some Joe Nobodies in a tank. Lame. Where is Optimus? Why not have him be the one who was brought back to life and defeated Megatron? Oh, because you would have to establish characterization between the two. You'd have to establish a history, relationships, and that's too much for us to think about, right? 2 hours and 13 minutes, some awesome close-ups and slow-mo of helicopters overhead and Megan Fox looking all concerned for Sam, and it looks like he's going to be dead. Again, he basically is dead here. So we've discussed the idea that wouldn't his death and sacrifice have more power if it was to stop this device from going off and destroying the sun? That would have been amazing. Instead, you have a meaningless death here where basically the shrapnel of an explosion created by no-names in a plane that just do a drive-by strike from the sky kill him. It's horrible. It's anticlimactic again, and it would have worked a lot better thematically too if, in sacrificing himself for a greater cause, Sam comes to the realization that sometimes you have to fight for things that are bigger than yourself, and the purpose of life isn't necessarily to always be having a great time. Just a suggestion for Sam's character growth. Here we have Sam coming back to life, 2 hours and 15 minutes. He went to the Transformers afterlife. Okay, if there is a jump the shark moment for films, that was it. Because it's like, where did that come from? It came out of nowhere. There was absolutely no setup. And it's a payoff that makes no sense. So here's an example of us being confused. It's a payoff to something that was never set up. What? Transformers Afterlife. Okay, and for some reason they can bring back a human and at the same time re-energize this artifact that then goes into Optimus Prime, and now he's brought back to life. If anything, if this film needed just the bare minimum rewrite, this should have occurred before the destruction of Testicle Transformer. Let's have Optimus come back and see him and the Autobots fighting the other Decepticons in this climactic third act. Now Megatron comes out of nowhere, and here he goes. He's taking the device. Okay, now we're getting a little more tension coming back. Okay, so Megatron has grabbed the artifact, and now he's put it into the device. There's the Fallen, and everything's being sucked in. It's starting back up. So that's funny. I did forget about Optimus getting pimped out here. Look, he gets plugged in, and now he's Super Optimus with all these weapons on him. So that's a little more satisfying, I have to admit. But it's very much a payoff that hasn't been set up. It's a little bit of a confusion for us because along the way, the Decepticons have not been active. We don't cut back to the Decepticons and we don't see them in motion in terms of going after what they want. And here Optimus is going to face off with the Fallen and everyone. Okay, and so he destroys the device. It's still a little bit too quick and still unsatisfying. A humble request here would have been to have the pyramid totally stripped away, reveal the device. We know what it looks like because it was in the little teaser at the beginning of the film when it was completely naked and out in the open. Have it be stripped so we can see its full power going into effect. And have it start to energize a little bit more. It was powering up a little bit, and we did see it going on. That was pretty cool. But Optimus destroyed it before it really had a chance to truly threaten anything. So still a disappointment. At least it's not as frustrating as it could have been, but still. Overall, we have to admit to ourselves that the whole device under the pyramid was a big letdown. It would have been better if it was closer to being fired. Maybe something that could have happened was that the beam's trajectory gets altered and it misses the target the Decepticons had it aimed at, and the Autobots aim it at the Decepticon homeworld, or wherever those hatchlings are, and that gets destroyed. That might be a little bit too cold and a little bit too over the top. But it could have been a little more dramatically used, this final ultimate doomsday weapon. And we go back to slow motion here, 2 hours, 21 minutes. Sam's mother and father are there, and they're just there because they have to be, I guess. They really serve no purpose. The booty former is there. She really serves no purpose. There's nothing going on with their relationship. I do like Shia LaBeouf's quote in that article that was read at the beginning of this commentary where he said basically Sam and Malenka, that's her name, booty former, they're basically the same character. They just are holding hands the whole time and doing the same things with each other. There's really nothing that she adds to the story here. 2 hours, 22 minutes, Sam, Optimus Prime, Booty Former, and X-File Lone Gunman are on the destroyer here on the deck looking out at the sky, much the same way that Optimus and Sam looked out over the hill at the end of the first movie. And I'm sure there's some voiceover here by Optimus. The humans are a worthy race, and we must teach them how to be wise. And there's more to come, because Cybertron still exists, and the Decepticon world still exists, and we really haven't explored any of the mythology, so we're gonna be exploring that in this threequel. Okay, I guess. It really doesn't have a satisfying ending at the end on a objective or thematic level. We tie up some loose ends here. Rainn Wilson comes back for some last-minute comedy, and I guess Sam is back to being a normal student, whatever that means. Sam and Booty Former are still dating. She goes on her motorcycle and rides off, and I guess off-screen story for the third movie is going to be that they got into a fight and they're no longer together. Fine, I guess we'll buy that. Not that it matters. I'm going to predict right now that the Victoria's Secret model, quote-unquote actress, is going to basically be exactly the same as the Booty Former. She will be Booty Former number 3, number 2. There's been a lot of Booty Formers, Hottie Formers in this series so far. She's going to be the exact same character. She's going to have the same function, which is to look great and to stand in very suggestive poses and be filmed in a very music video kind of way. If they're rebooting her as a character, it's going to be like, okay, what is she, a scientist? And she meets Sam, and now they have to discover some things about the Transformers and the Autobots and all that? Okay, I guess. We'll see. I really have no faith. 2 movies are enough proof for me that the goal here is to take whatever Transformer characters haven't been on the big screen yet and to make them a reality, to promote them in the previews, and to entice us to want to see these new CGI versions of our classic favorite characters on the big screen. That's going to be enough. And if there's any hint of Unicron, I know they're keeping things a secret. They just say it's Shockwave right now. So if Shockwave, Unicron, any of these other Transformers show up, I'm probably going to pay matinee price to see them on the big screen. And that's what Transformers knows. It has us between a rock and a hard place. In the one hand, it knows we want to see the CGI magic on the big screen, while on the other, it knows it doesn't have to create great characters or an interesting story, because the CGI is stronger than that. Its drawing power is what really matters. And that's why we're going to see a third film. We're going to have an amazing teaser moment in the trailer when it comes out sometime in early 2011. It's going to be some huge Transformer action sequence, and we're going to be like, oh my god, we got to check that out. It looks better than the first 2 movies. For me, it's really going to come down to the writers. If it's the same writers, if it's Orci and Kruger and Kurtzman, there's no reason to believe that Bay's influence isn't going to overpower their screenwriting knowledge. And what we're going to have in the third film are awesome shots of military vehicles, slow motion, comic distraction, and close-ups of hottie formers. When it comes to this franchise, I'm going to have to go with the English style of law. Guilty until proven innocent, because Transformers has had 2 films to prove that it's innocent before guilty, and it's failed. So it's in the doghouse, it's in the jail, it's in the movie-pocalypse holding cell until it proves that it's a sign of movie hope. More news to come as information becomes available. I'm watching the credits here roll. So with all this considered, let's just quickly review the story conclusions that we've discussed throughout our time here. Transformers 2 continued the failure that was established in Transformers 1. Lack of established mythology, no backstory, to explain why the Transformers are doing the things that they're doing. It would have been nice to have had some kind of background that we were all living in peace on Cybertron, then this happened, and then we went to war, and we came to Earth because of X, and now on Earth we need to find this, or on Earth we're hiding from the Decepticons, or we need to defeat the Decepticons because of this. From the Decepticons' point of view, we need the same questions answered. The lack of focus on Transformer relationships has hurt this franchise the most. We barely know any character's name. We don't know what their relationships are with each other, how they feel about what's going on, what they want to achieve. This ties into Bumblebee not talking. We never get a sense of who he is, what he wants. This ties into Optimus never revealing what his goal as a commander is. Why is he taking his team to Earth? What does he want to achieve? The relationship between Megatron and Optimus is lacking. The relationship between Megatron and Starscream is lacking. And those two right there were the core of the original series. Starscream hated Megatron, but always kind of two-faced lied to him that he was loyal. And then when he got the chance, he wanted to take control. He wanted to basically pull an et tu, Brute, to Megatron and be the leader of the Decepticons. While Optimus sought peace, and he didn't necessarily hate Megatron, he just wanted him to realize that he is good, and if he chooses to peacefully settle their argument, it would be better for everyone on Cybertron. All of that is gone. And it could be argued it necessarily wasn't there so strongly in the series, but because the series focused on robot-to-robot relations, even if on the most superficial level, it was established because, hey, the robots have to talk to each other. And if they're talking to each other, we have to establish what they want from each other, who they are, how they feel about each other. All this is missing. And because none of that was worked out, comedy distraction was chosen to replace true drama and conflict and characterization. Comedy and CGI genre set piece money shots have basically replaced any kind of true storytelling here in the Transformers franchise. For the third film, what can be done to correct the mistakes of these first two films? The little tidbits of information revealed in this article indicate that there might be a prequel or some kind of time traveling going on, a space race between the US and the USSR. Again, the USSR does not exist currently, and while the first two films seem to have been set in our present day, mainly because of the Autobot car models are currently cars that you can purchase, we have to assume it's 2007, 2009. With the mention of the USSR, probably there will be some kind of time traveling going, or just some kind of dual story layered lost kind of thing where maybe it's present day, then it's past day, alternate reality, past timeline, whatever it is. With that said, it appears that there's going to be some attempt to try to establish why this battle has been going on. And as we just mentioned, that's one of the major things that need to be solved. I personally don't care about seeing that many more newer Transformers brought to CGI reality. Yeah, I'd like to see the Dinobots. That would be interesting. Yes, I want to see Unicron. Soundwave is a pretty cool character. Maybe the Insecticons. There's a lot of different robots that need to be brought to cinematic life. Continuously introducing new robots without establishing relationships is basically like a serial dater or someone who's into one-night stands. You're just going for the pleasure. You're just going for that one thing that you want, and you're not sticking around to get to know the character. I'd rather watch a movie where we establish the character and know who they are, what they want, their relationships with everyone, instead of just constantly seeing these newer models coming in. And it's funny because Booty Former number 1, we never really got to know her true character. she was just a great model to look at, and we're literally bringing in a new model number 2, booty former number 2. Or 3 or 4, because in part 1 you had the British accent blondie, and then in part 2 you had the T1000 booty former, so this would be booty former number 4. Whatever the terminology you want to use. More character development over newer models and just showing us cool, interesting CGI technology. So establish a mythology, focus on the robot relationships, make the main characters, which would be Optimus, Megatron, and Sam, have objectives, have personalities, have things that they want to go after, and why not have them be affected by those things? Have each scene clearly deal with the struggle to get the objective, because once there is an objective in place, every scene becomes about, I'm trying to get that, and there's someone trying to stop me. And within that conflict of the scene, the next scene and future scenes are created as a result of that struggle. So I try to get my objective here, I'm defeated, I think of a new way, and the next scene is me trying again. Or I get what I want, but it turns out it's only one piece of a bigger item, and now I have to go for piece number 2. Or I get what I want, and it breaks down, it turns into dust, and now I have to find a way to re-solidify it. So how do I do that? The conflict of the present moment creates the actions of the future one. Set up, payoff, set up, payoff. In hindsight, it definitely is a little bit easier to talk about after seeing the finished product, but hopefully going back and looking at what was created can lead to some insight and to some answers in terms of what needs to be fixed and how it can be done. Watching a movie is easy. Writing it and making it is one of the most difficult undertakings in existence. All the pieces that are in constant motion, all the personalities and factors, economic and weather, and all the different things that are out of the control of the people involved are too many to be counted. And as producers have said, it's really a miracle that movies get made, that projects actually get put together, because there's so many factors that if you just pull one little piece out, if a star gets sick or injured or changes their mind, the project falls apart. If there's not enough financing, it's done. If there's a huge storm and it destroys the set, it gets delayed for 3 months. There's so many factors, and it really is amazing that movies like this get produced, get made. So on the one hand, we should be thankful and thankful to the people that make them, but on the other hand, the writing is done before any of that is put in motion. And literally there can be years and years of time put into motion to make sure that the writing is great, to make sure that the story is solid. But unfortunately, the true motivation is striking the iron while it's still hot. And our interest in Transformers wouldn't be as intense 3 years from now as it is a year and a half from now. Why bother making it an A+ level script when a story that's on a D+ or C- level is being rewarded with almost $1 billion? Do it while the audience is still under the influence of buzz, while the demand is still there, because it's eventually going to die out. And if you don't strike now, while the box office iron is hot, millions of dollars are going to be missed out on. That's unfortunately the state of what's going on. And I don't know about you, but I don't really feel like spending 2.5 hours of my life watching something that is basically a CGI demo reel of, here's what we can do with this technology now. And everything else around it is basically an excuse. Essentially, Transformers 2, Transformers 1, and any of these films that focus on genre set pieces as being the main reason why we're there and just delivering on those, but forgetting about story elements, essentially these films, Transformers specifically, becomes CGI porn. What's one of the trademarks of watching a porn movie? Fast forwarding through the dialogue, getting to the good stuff, getting to the money shots. And that's what we have here. We're getting to the CGI money shots. And when we get this on Blu-ray or DVD, are we going to sit there and watch the non-dramatic comic distraction scenes between characters, or are we just going to fast forward to the awesome battle at the beginning where Optimus is chasing the big wheel Transformer, or the forest fight between the Decepticons and the Autobots, or the pyramid fight at the end. We're just going right to the CGI money shots. That is the ultimate example of CGI porn. We don't care about the drama, we don't care about the characters. While I know for me, one of my favorite films is Braveheart. And I totally love the huge battle sequences. But I find myself just going right to the scenes where William Wallace is motivating troops, or where he's fighting with someone sharing his beliefs in terms of why he's fighting and why he does the things that he does. Those scenes are even more watchable than the fights. Those scenes make the fights have meaning. Those scenes infuse emotion and make us say, whoa, I don't want this character to get killed. Or when this character dies, we feel an impact, and oh my god, I can't believe that Robert the Bruce betrayed William Wallace. Well, that betrayal, that emotion is only there because of their earlier scenes where they were emotionally fighting with each other. If that's not there, the fights are meaningless. And we can see here in Transformers where these no-name, awesomely rendered Transformer characters, robots, are destroyed, are shot at, are blown up. The only reaction we have is, that looked pretty cool. We don't know who they are, and it means nothing to us that they're gone. So what's the fun of watching these movies? Just to see something cool? Just do a demo reel. Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen, could have been 30 minutes. Edit out all human interaction and just cut together the Transformers fighting action version. It could be a 30-minute movie. Re-release it, it'll make another $200 million, and it'll be what we want. And all that other excuse, all that porn movie, boring dialogue story stuff will be out of the way, and we don't even need to waste our time fast-forwarding. With all that said, I humbly end the movie night for the Razzie Award-winning Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Please leave your comments, share your thoughts. I'm always looking for feedback. Again, I haven't made many movie nights, and these are pretty much stream of consciousness thoughts. I just basically take the structure of screenwriting and use that as a guide of the discussion through a film like this, and combined with whatever tangents sort of come up with what we're watching. So share your thoughts. I really want to hear what you think about the Transformers franchise, what you thought worked and didn't work in these first two films, specifically here the second film, and what your thoughts and hopes are for Transformers 3, July 1st, 2011. Until next time, remember, StoryCorp gives us more of what we pay for, especially if we pay $835 million for it. We're going to get more of it. And until next time, long live good movies.